So I just want to be clear. My desire in this, as I learned about these religions and sought to get to know people and have conversations, you're probably not going to find a name, dear, just have a seat anywhere, you're fine, is that we would gain some knowledge that would hopefully garner some more questions from you, some more opportunities to seek understanding within them. I will seek to help you to whatever level that I can. But here's what I understand. My goal in all of this is that you would have a greater knowledge walking out of each night than you had coming in, and that it would spark more desire for you to learn about people and to learn about what they believe. So this is one of my favorite religions to talk about, is Buddhism. So as we get into that tonight, we're going to talk about Buddhism and how Buddhism developed. It's very intriguing to me because, as I said to you a couple of weeks ago, and so I want to reiterate this is a religion that relies on the whole cycle of reincarnation. So that samsara that I taught you within Hinduism, you can go back and watch the video. All these are on our class course resources that are there as well. So you can always go back and look at those things. But we are still under the understanding of the cycle of reincarnation. So if you don't have that down yet, make sure that you get that understanding of life, death, or birth, life, death, and then rebirth with the understanding of moksha. Moksha is the breaking of the cycle where you're no longer in the cycle. Now, nirvana is going to be more of a Buddhist term where it is the place in which you reside once you reach moksha. But it is not like heaven. It is much like what we talk about in Hinduism, where your individualism ceases and you become one with the essence of the universe, or as we talked about in Hinduism, it is Brahman. But Buddhism got its start in the 5th century. That is when a man named Siddhartha Gautama was born. And we're going to talk about his story. We're even going to watch a little animated video. Now, you may think you're too old for cartoons, but I love showing this because for those of you that are different kind of learner, the video is going to ingrain it in your mind a lot better than me talking about it, although I'll do both of those things. So as we look at Buddhism tonight, the first thing I want us to gain here is what Buddhism actually is. Buddhism is a reform movement within Hinduism, okay? A reform movement. Now, when we talked about reform movements, what we said was, just like our reform movement within Christianity, we were not seeking as reformists within Christianity to go back to a unique understanding of Catholicism. The reform movement was to seek to go what was there before the Roman Catholic Church. And it was called the Universal Catholic Church. We use the same word, but the word Catholic actually means universal. So our desire to have a reform movement was to go back to what was in existence before that, and that was the early church. And what were the practices within the early church? That's what the Reformation movement sought to do, was to go what was back behind. These two reform movements within Hinduism also do the same thing. They seek to go back to what was available and what was around during the time period before Hinduism actually emerged as Hinduism. So those are those Aryan rulers that moved from the Persian area to the subcontinent of India, and then from that developed the whole idea of Hinduism. So these two reform movements are Jainism and Buddhism. I've decided not to cover Jainism because it's a much smaller movement. But Buddhism is known as, here's a first note because it's not on your list there, it is known as the middle way, or the middle path. The middle path between what? If you're in the middle, you're between two other ideas. And the two ideas that Buddhism is the middle way is between Hinduism and Jainism. Jainism is led by an individual, we would be talking about Mahavira, just like the life of Buddha. Now here's the interesting thing. Jainism developed in the 6th century, so about 50 to 75 years prior to Siddhartha Gautama or Buddha. Now, Jainism, the story of Mahavira and the story of Siddhartha Gautama are so close in nature to each other, we don't know, this far removed from it, which one influenced the other, but their stories are very, very similar. But what Mahavira did, instead of he was born within Hinduism. He likely was not starting a new religion. He never would have thought that he was actually starting a new religion. But what Mahavira did is he linked himself to a guru, but thought the guru was not giving him enough, and so he went to the extreme. And this is the one thing that Buddhism is in the middle path. Jainism is what we call extreme asceticism. Now that's a word that is sometimes hard to define. But ascetics, you see asceticism within Christian monks. You see asceticism within Buddhist and Jainist monks. What is asceticism? Asceticism is making your life intentionally difficult. All right? So if you've ever watched old movies, there are Christian monks who hit themselves in the head with boards, okay? There's a few of you that I think you might have been those ascetic monks at some point in time, and you lost too many brain cells that wasn't helpful. They will wear heavy wool clothing. Well, what does wool do? It itches, especially when it's warm. It itches, and it makes them uncomfortable. They will go without the understanding of sexuality or sexual intercourse. They will go without that. They live a celibate lifestyle. Again, a difficult lifestyle to ignore the physical cravings and needs that one may have. So all of these things are ascetic ideas. And Jains live in extreme asceticism. I've already talked about the fact that they will sweep the ground in front of them so they don't kill any living thing. But Mahavira, in particular, would go around and would allow dogs to bite him. He would never sleep on the same ground 2 nights in a row. He would allow people to burn him with sticks from the fire because he was desirous of any type of pain and suffering. Why would he be doing that? He's seeking to not be attached to anything. Now that idea is going to come into the life and understanding of Buddhism as well, but not to that extreme. So one extreme that Buddhism is within is Jainism on this side. The other extreme is Hinduism, because Hinduism has this plethora of gods and deities, and is incredibly based upon physical sacrifice of animals specifically. Very bloody religion is Hinduism, okay? And this idea of sacrifice. You say, sacrifice of animals for Hinduism, and yet they're vegetarian. Yeah, go figure. I can't explain that for you, but this is the case, that animals, extreme sacrifice was Hinduism, extreme asceticism with Jainism. What does Buddhism seek to do? It seeks to differ itself from both of those two areas, okay? Thus it's called the middle path or the middle way, because it provides a more copacetic pathway that one might enjoy instead of dislike. And for that reason, it becomes a much more popular religion. Now, we've already talked about the fact that Buddhism and Jainism disavow the Vedic text of Hinduism. They have nothing to do with it. They have nothing to do with the need for deities. So it's everything in Jainism and Buddhism is based on one singular principle within the reincarnation cycle. Anybody want to take a guess? What were some of those principles that governed the cycle? Anybody want to take a little quiz time? What? Karma. Karma is what Jainism and Buddhism wholly depend upon. What are the consequences of your actions? And this is what makes it atheistic, because all of life is depending on what I do. What I do. Now, here's what's difficult about Buddhism and Jainism for this matter is what makes something right or wrong? What gives it its sense of morality? And we're going to try to see and see where that is. We see something within Buddhism, but it's still a little nebulous. So they both disavow the caste system as well. All right? This is also very interesting. If you were beginning a new religion and you were Hindu, which caste do you think you must be in? The highest. You must be in the highest because you're a priest. So you must be in the Brahmin caste if you're going to start any new religious idea, because they're the ones that are looked to. And Jainism, Mahavira, and Siddhartha Gautama are not Brahmin. They are Kshatriya. They're in that second caste system. So I think it's incredibly interesting that they disavow the caste system because they don't want it to be based upon them. Now, that's my words, not theirs. But I think it's incredibly interesting that both of them were Kshatriyas and not Brahmins. But it brings us back to the actual idea. Was Siddhartha Gautama seeking to build a new religion? And the likelihood is no. But we see some patterns. Just keep in mind, even though we're not going over Jainism, although I keep bringing it up, what we're going to see is much of the things that are in Buddha's story, a lot of them are in Mahavira's story as well. Now, with that being said, there was a famous Catholic priest who developed a whole order of monks, and this person was very wealthy and left everything to live among the animals. Anybody know his name? St. Francis of Assisi. So if you know that church history, which if you don't, you're going to next semester, because that's what we're going to dive into next semester. But St. Francis of Assisi, when I think of Siddhartha Gautama's story, it is a lot like St. Francis of Assisi. So let's look at some of the things. The next thing we have is an actual timeline of Buddhism and how it develops. Siddhartha Gautama lived between 480 and 405, 75 years he lived. Now you're going to find this a little bit later, but the Buddha died by someone giving him spoiled curry. Now this is one of those things that it's just like Buddhist monks don't tend to eat anything that people don't give them. So several years ago, about 14 years ago, Pastor Bart and I traveled to Laos, okay? If you don't know where Laos or what Laos is, you probably call it Laos or Laos. It is not that. We discovered quite quickly, the boys from Texas, that it's actually Laos, okay? And we traveled there. We had the opportunity to go to the capital city. And when we got there, one of the very cool things that so many tourists come to see are the line of Buddhist monks that start early in the morning and they proceed through the town. It is like a daily parade of Buddhist monks in their orange robes. And everyone on the side of the roads, because you gain merit towards enlightenment within Buddhism by providing food to the Buddhist monks. That is personally something I want to reinstitute into the church, okay? Is that we get provided food. No, okay. So we went out to see this, and if you know anything about our illustrious lead pastor, he is a little bit germophobic, okay? He loves shaking your hands, but he washes himself in germicide after he does that, okay? So just know that is one of his things. He's a little germophobic in some of those things, and I've just let out one of his secrets, and it's on video. So if we could maybe cut that, that would be great. But nevertheless, so I want you to imagine Bart Howe watching everyone take their hands into rice and put it into each monk's bowl. Bart's going, there is no way in the world I'd be eating anything. And so he said, if I were a Buddhist monk at the beginning of the Buddhist temple, there'd be a huge pile of old rice where I'd throw that out and go get me some other grub. But this is what's happening because people are trying to reach closer to enlightenment by providing food for these Buddhist monks. And that's one of the things that was happening. So as we look at Buddhism, 480 to 405, it was some of that rice that Buddha was given when he was 75. It was spoiled curry rice, and that's how he died at the age of 75. So 480 to 405, on a biblical timeline, right in the dead center of this, is the return of a dude named Nehemiah back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple, 444 BC. So that is right in the center of what is happening during Buddha's lifetime. Daniel lives earlier than this. Daniel is in about 550 to 600 BCE, so he predates Siddhartha Gautama. So he is in exile in the Babylonian kingdom, which then changes over to the Persian kingdom. So from a biblical timeline, that's what's happening and when this is happening. At 405 and 305, 100 years after each of these, after Siddhartha Gautama's death in 305, but right after, in 405, we have these Buddhist councils, which again are Buddhists from different cities coming together. It's going to be very similar, in some similarity, to our Christian councils, which we will deal with next semester. You can come back and we can talk about that. But then in 250, in this third council, we have two groups that split from the singular one group. We break into two groups, Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. Now, we're going to talk about both of those. It's probably going to be, we won't meet next week, by the way. So we are not meeting next week. The birth of my grandchild is happening next Wednesday, and so I am not going to be here, all right? But we will meet the following week. So, but Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism is something that we will be looking into. Theravada is the atheistic kind. Mahayana is the kind of Buddhism that makes Buddha to be a deity. But most people don't realize that both Jainism and the most conservative form of Buddhism are totally atheistic. There are no needs for God, no need for gods. It's based on what effort you actually put into it. All right, so let's go on to the next deal. And now we're going to get into the lifestyle of Siddhartha Gautama. So he's born into a royal home of a king. The king's name is Suddhodana, and his mother's name is Maya. Anybody remember what Maya means according to Hinduism? False knowledge, okay? False knowledge, okay? That would not be the name I would choose for anyone. So, but King Suddhodana and Maya. But they desired for him to be a ruler. Well, why? Because his dad was he was a king. So he desired for his son to also be a king. But a Hindu teacher had told him, an ascetic monk had told him, listen, your son is a great individual. I can tell that he is a great individual. But if he sees ascetic monks and the peace that they have, if he sees death, if he sees disease, he is going to become a great teacher. But what did King Suddhodana, what did he want him to be? He wanted him to be a ruler. So he sheltered him within the walls of his castle. He did not want him to ever leave. Now, I love how this is portrayed in this little, in this animation in just a second. So he is sheltered early in his life from death, old age, disease, and ascetic monks. He marries at age 19, and he has a son who's named Rahula. Now, what religion is Siddhartha Gautama at this time? He's Hindu, all right? What did Hindu males, what was their pattern? They would be students, then they would be householders, which means that they would marry and have a family. And then they would leave and join themselves to a guru. They would abandon, in a Western mindset, abandon their family. We're still getting lots of ring here. They would abandon their family, but they would be living with other relatives that are with them. And then eventually, they would get to this place that is called sannyasin state, where they're a hermit begging for food and eventually losing their clothing as it wears out and going around naked. This is the pattern that Siddhartha Gautama was following. He was following the Hindu pattern of a Hindu male. Mahavira does the same thing. So this is where their stories are incredibly similar. Now, he viewed his life as wasteful, so he abandoned his wife and child for an ascetic and secluded life. Many did this in Hinduism. And he attached himself to a guru with no sense of satisfaction. As we get to this point, Mahavira and Siddhartha Gautama's story are almost identical. What Mahavira then does is he goes to an extreme ascetic lifestyle. What Siddhartha Gautama does is he gets with 5 companions where they are all learning together. And each of them are trying to rid themselves of what they desire most. So you're going to see this in the video displayed as well. One wants sleep. So what he does is he carries around 2 big boulders all the time so that he can never sleep and drop the boulders. One would hang upside down from a tree because what he desired more than anything was peace. What Siddhartha Gautama, he desired food. And so what he went without was, some say that he lived on 1 grain of rice, or some say 1 sesame per day. All right? So, what's the image of Buddha that we most all think about? Fat Buddha. Okay? Now, why do we think that? That is not what Buddha likely would have looked like. Where do you see fat Buddhas?
Statue.
Where? Well, you see a statue, but where do you see the statues? Chinese restaurants. Because this is what's known as the happy Buddha, who he is fat and jovial. This is not what Buddha would have looked like. He would have been quite emaciated. Zach, you had a question.
Is there a possibility that 1 grain of rice translates to something different, like a small bowl, or
Certainly.
Like a handful? Or...
Certainly. And these also, the question was, is it possible this 1 grain of rice translates to 1 bowl? What we have to understand is, as followers tell the story, they want Buddha to look more and more holy, righteous, going through asceticism to the greatest amount. But what I would just take from this is the thing that he did, though, was to fast often, and that he was likely emaciated, which goes into his story. So he's so emaciated, and he's sitting by the river one day. He finally faints and falls into the river, and he comes to, and he wakes up, just like some of you just did. He wakes up, and at some parts of the story say it's at that point that he receives enlightenment. Another part of the story, the way it's going to be depicted in this video, is that he sits under a sacred bo tree with his legs crossed, and when he touches the ground, he sees all of his former lives. But nevertheless, he comes to the place of enlightenment, which was the end goal of what moksha was all designed to do. He comes to the place of enlightenment. He becomes one with Brahman, but stays in human form in order to be a guru and teacher, to teach others the way. And that's going to make a lot more sense when we talk about the 4 noble truths and the 8-fold path of Buddhism. But this is the story of Buddha. Now, he was scorned by his buddies because they were still trying this ascetic lifestyle, but he eventually finds them in a town called Benares, and he convinces them of his experience, and they together, those 5, become the first monastic order of Buddhism, what's known as the Sangha. There are 3 jewels of Buddhism. This is not anywhere in your notes either. 3 jewels of Buddhism. The first is the Sangha, the community of monks. The second is Buddha himself as a person. The third is confusing because it's also a term we saw in Hinduism, but it's called the Dharma. Now, Dharma in Hinduism meant your purpose or duty. Well, it kind of has that. The Dharma, according to Buddhism, are the teachings of Buddha. So the 3 jewels of Buddhism were the Sangha, the community of monks, Buddha himself, and then Dharma, or the teachings of Buddha. Those are the 3 jewels of Buddhism. He dies, this says at 80, it's actually 75 according to our other, but he dies at 80 after eating spoiled curry. Now, Buddhism grows in popularity because it goes across caste, and it now allows women a place within the religion. This is hugely transformational because within Hinduism, women must come back as males in the next life in order to eventually reach this place of moksha. Women cannot do it from their lifestyle. They will have to die and come back as a Brahmin male in the next life. When he disavows the caste system, all that goes away with it. So it opens Buddhism towards women, and it opens everything across caste. No longer is it just the Brahmins that can achieve this. So one can imagine in that first 100 years after Buddhism, Buddhism grows rapidly within a world of Hinduism because it's so much more popular. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. We are going to go to this video I want you to watch this. Now here, I want you to pick out some of the things in the story. There's some things to me that I'm going to bring out that I find quite humorous in this process. But listen to this. It's going to be about 12 to 13 minutes long, 14. So pay attention to it because I think you'll gain the story of what we just talked about by watching this. Yes, please shoot the video. You can dim the lights if that's possible, if it's not too difficult.
Where's Ananda?
He's in the shed, crying. He thinks you're going to die.
Go and get him. Oh, I'm tired, Siddhartha Gautama. My body feels like an old cart held together with straps. Ananda, all of us sooner or later have to leave what we love. But Master, I am not ready for you to die. You don't need me. I've told you all I can. And what I've told you is like the ocean. The further you go in, the deeper it gets. But I can hardly swim yet. Then let's start together at the shore. When we die, we are reborn. Our good actions in one life are rewarded in the next. When I was reborn into this life, my father, King Suddhodana, had the highest hopes for me.
Wise Asita, is Prince Gautama destined for greatness?
This child has all the signs of a great being. He has lived many lives, each more noble and truthful than the last. He will become either a great ruler or a teacher of great truths.
What will decide it?
He will decide.
I want him to be a great king like me. And I think he will have no need to leave this palace.
My father created a perfect world for me for over 20 years.
The prince will take his walk along this path today. Make sure there are no dead flowers.
Your Highness.
The prince's horse is lame, Your Highness.
Then stable him elsewhere until he recovers. This is something the prince need not know about.
My father gave me everything I could possibly desire. I had no need to ask for anything, but there were some things that even my father couldn't control.
Prepare the horses. I'd like to take a ride. In all these years, Chana, I've never gone beyond that wall. Who has painted his hair white? Why does he move so slowly? Is it a dance?
He is old.
What is old?
It happens to all of us in time. The skin dries, the hair loses its color, and the body becomes weak. That is old.
It happens to all of us? I don't like his singing.
He's not singing. He is sick and in pain.
What is sick?
His body is complaining. All bodies, rich or poor, ignorant or wise, can feel this way.
all bodies can feel this way? How can he sleep with all that noise around him?
This is a dead man. He is not asleep. His life has gone.
Is this the only dead man in the world?
I'm afraid not, my prince. Death comes to every living thing.
Take me back, Channa.
My son, I've got wonderful news for you.
Why didn't you tell me about life outside?
I wanted the palace to be your life always. I wanted you to be happy.
And I was. But now I can't ever be happy again.
Of course you can.
Knowing that you, my dear father, will die. That my wife may get sick. That Channa and I will grow old and weak.
This is not the time to think about death. I have wonderful news. You have a son.
I have a son.
He was beautiful. And of course I wanted to be glad, but now I knew that he too would have to suffer sickness, old age, and finally death.
What are you?
A seeker
Of what?
of the only thing in life that doesn't wither and die.
And what is that?
Truth.
And have you found it?
Not yet. But since leaving home and giving everything away, I've felt more at peace.
I'm not free to leave the palace. I have a duty to my father's kingdom.
But if you seek and find the truth, your kingdom will be infinitely greater.
I decided to leave that night. And like you, Ananda, I cried. It is painful to be separated from those you love. But I knew that when I had found what I was looking for, I would return to share it with them. Channa took me to the forest, and I exchanged my palace clothes for simple ones. I cut my hair and then told Channa to tell my father that from now on, I would live without a home, in search of perfect peace of mind. I spent a year with 2 elderly masters of meditation. They helped me to calm and train my mind. But I knew I hadn't found what I was looking for. I moved on. I met 5 other men, all about my age. They too were searching.
I have studied meditation with 2 masters, but we sat in the shade.
Pushing our bodies to the limits gives us spiritual energy.
When you deny your body what it most wants, you set your mind free for higher things. I desire comfort and warmth, and he loves to talk.
I desire sleep.
What do you desire most?
I always seem to be hungry.
Well then, you know what you must do without.
I starved myself for 6 years. By the end, I was eating 3 sesame seeds a day. And yet, the only thing that I could be certain about was that I was close to death. As I prepared to die, I thought of my son and remembered a moment when I was about his age, the meaning of which I suddenly understood. It was the palace ploughing match. Everyone else was watching a festival, but I was seeing something different. Sweating men and animals, blind milk-white grubs being exposed to the sun, cutworms and insects. Everyone else was enjoying themselves, but I saw just suffering and death. I sat there for a long time, feeling very still. Only in that stillness could I see how things really were. This memory filled me with energy. If I had already felt something of the peace I was seeking when just a child, well-fed and clothed, then I certainly did not need to starve myself to find it again. I decided to eat properly once more. Much to the disgust of my companions.
I shall not get up from here until I found the truth I'm seeking. That special awareness, enlightenment.
But the mind has a terrible enemy. His name is Mara, and he seeks to tempt and destroy. First, he sent his beautiful daughters.
Tempt him, distract him, make him desire you.
Mara knew that if I found enlightenment, I would go on to tell others how to escape his evil power. I had to find that moment of stillness again.
So, you ignore my daughters. Well, you shall feel the fury of my army. Be plagued by your worst nightmare, Gautama! Do you think you are ready for supreme enlightenment? Gautama, are you so sure you have it in you? Supreme enlightenment. Gautama, are you worthy enough?
But as I touched the earth spoke.
He is worthy.
And I saw my hundreds of past lives. And I saw how what I had done in one life influenced the next. I saw life as a wheel. For some, always moving upwards. For others, always falling downwards. There was no escape from the wheel of birth, death, and rebirth. And no escape from the three poisons, hate, greed, and stupidity that kept the wheel turning. I realized that whether your life is easy or hard, you can't escape death. But suddenly, what I'd been searching for was revealed to me. If I did not fear death, death had no power. Watching the moon that long night, I slowly understood that the way to avoid suffering was to free yourself from wanting anyone or anything, and to be ready always to give and receive. Found enlightenment. I had become a Buddha, an awoken one.
All right, so when we look at this, I just hope it kind of drives the memory a little bit differently than just the facts about this. But did you see some what we call meta-narratives? It is themes that we see also within Christianity. What are some of the themes or words that you picked out that had some connection to Christianity? Okay, kind of an evil, Mara, this devil figure in this, okay? Great. What else? Death, okay? There were, yes, Craig?
Getting rid of the fear of death.
Okay, getting rid of the fear of death. But how did it achieve it? Yeah, very differently. By getting rid, and here's the key words, by getting rid of desire. So getting rid of desire. Now, this week in our spiritual warfare series, Bart's going to be preaching on the flesh and how we deal with desire. So this is going to be very telling. You're going to come out of this with an understanding of how Buddhism deals with this, going straight into an understanding of how do we deal with the issues of desire in our faith. This is what I can appreciate about Buddhism. I've told you as we started this, there are some truths within many of these religions. In Buddhism, I find a lot of little t truth. I don't find capital T truth. The fact that, as this depicted, this seeker who came to Siddhartha Gautama and said, have you found, what are you seeking? I'm seeking what all people seek. They seek truth. I remember the story of Pilate dealing with Jesus, asking Jesus the question, what is truth? Truth is something that all humanity is seeking. What actually is the truth? That's one of those little t truths that I find within Buddhism. But Buddhism is going to deal with everything based on this particular term, desire, and getting rid of all desires. Now, can you get rid of all your desires? Because according to Christianity, and by the way, Islam and Judaism, these desires were innately built within you. According to Christianity and Judaism, you are born in the image of God. God has created you with certain desires. And so you are unable to actually get rid of those desires. What we have to do is deal with what those desires create. The desires aren't sin, but giving over to all the desires in our lives, this becomes sin, and the sin must be dealt with. This is why we need a Savior. So as we look at this, there are many things within this. So what are some of the things that Gautama would teach? And again, when I say Gautama, he eventually is known as the Buddha. Well, what's the difference? Siddhartha Gautama is his given name. The Buddha means enlightened one. So after he reaches this point of enlightenment, he is known as the Buddha. All right, so that's how you get from Siddhartha Gautama to the Buddha. One thing that he teaches, one thing that he teaches is that change is inevitable. This is what is the principle of anicca. Anicca, change is inevitable. Can you agree with that? That's little t truth. Change is inevitable. How much change did you have today? My father-in-law got stung by yellow jackets today. That's some change. Am I right? We all got older today. I hate to tell you that, you did. You lost a multiplicity of brain cells today. Our hope is just that we replace them. But what is aging? Aging is that we don't replace the cells that die every day. So we get older as a result of this. I took a selfie with a good friend of mine who was in town last week, and it was in my car, so everything was black behind us. And he has no hair, so that was helpful for him. But I'm like looking at only gray in this selfie, and I'm going, dude, how did that guy get so old, right? Change is inevitable. I can go with Siddhartha Gautama on that. There is no permanence of the soul. I don't agree with this. Anatta or anatman, but there's no permanence of the soul. What I understand this to mean is that when you change lives, your soul does not stay permanent in whatever life you have, according to Buddhism. He believed that the release of the reincarnation cycle came through the cessation of what he calls tanha, which is all desires. Now, we're going to find a fatal flaw within Buddhism in just a second as it relates to that. But this provided this middle ground between Hinduism, this middle path between Hinduism and Jainism, and the extremeness of this. He rejects the Vedas, and he more than likely did not believe he was founding a new religion. But he began, and here is the essence of Buddhism. I told you what was the essence of Hinduism. One thing that you should remember about Hinduism is what? Come on, students. The reincarnation cycle and moksha and how this happens. If you're going to understand one thing about Hinduism, understand that, because that's going to help you understand all of these other cyclical religions. But if you're going to understand one area about Buddhism, you need to understand these. What Buddha came up with is what he calls the Four Noble Truths. Number one, truth number one, to live is to experience suffering. Can you agree with this? It is true. This is my friend Gary Collins. Gary wrote a book on his experience with grief and the loss of his dear wife. Thank you, sir. I could not believe that. What a gift. But what you're talking about, Gary, is helping others by helping them understand your process of grief. And I agree with this. To live is to experience suffering. If you love hard enough, you're going to suffer. I remember teaching my daughters as young love disappeared in their life from time to time, that listen, you don't understand this, but this is going to make you stronger. Are they ready to hear that from their father? Absolutely not. Okay? Puppy love is still love to the puppy. That's what I always had to remember. Puppy love is still love to the puppy. But the idea is, what doesn't kill us makes us okay. We have sayings like that I kind of believe. And to live is to experience suffering. As I just mentioned a while ago, our brain cells, our bodily cells are dying all the time. There is suffering going on in our bodies, and we don't even fully understand and comprehend it. So to live is to experience suffering. Okay, I can go with Buddha with that. Number two, suffering comes from desire and attachment. Would you agree with that? Okay, if I didn't want anything, I wouldn't necessarily experience suffering. If I didn't love you people, it wouldn't hurt when you say bad, negative things to me. Okay? Whoa. But nevertheless, when we do love people, we open ourselves to the opportunity for us to experience suffering and to experience pain as a result of that. So I'm like, dude, I'm trucking right along. I could be a good Buddhist. Number three, the way to eliminate suffering is to eliminate desire. Here is the major philosophical flaw in Buddhism. Can someone see it? What is it, Derek Ian? Because this is a desire. To desire, to eliminate desire, is in fact a desire. Anything that you want to do to eliminate desire and get rid of it is in itself a desire to eliminate desire. And I have not consulted with any Buddhist monks that have been able to help me understand where is this going. But yes, I agree. Suffering is here in all life. I agree that suffering comes from desire and attachment. But the answer to this is not to eliminate desire. The answer is to find the one who is true. It is to find and avail the blood of Christ over our lives for the sin in our lives. We'll come back to this, but this is a great place to interject this question, to talk about, so is the desire to eliminate suffering in itself a desire? Now, not trying to say this is the gotcha question, but this is a great dialogue question when you come and talk about Buddhism. And then the fourth noble truth, that this is only possible, to eliminate desire, is only possible when you follow the eightfold path. So the four noble truths, the fourth truth gives way to the eightfold path. Now, if you were to look back at our video, maybe you'll go back and watch it again or find it on your own. There was a wagon wheel leaned up against the tree. Anybody remember the wagon wheel? Okay, I am all about imagery. That wagon wheel has 7 spokes, and I said, somebody missed an opportunity, all right? That wagon wheel has 7 spokes. If they really wanted to really focus in on Buddhism, it should have had 8 spokes. Okay, but it didn't. So this is possible only if you follow the Eightfold Path. Now, the reason that the next slide that we're going to talk about is where we're going to complete tonight, and I'm going to give you one little assignment before we leave. But here's the thing. This Eightfold Path is this idea of this wheel. If there's any place within Buddhism that seeks to give it an understanding of morality, I would say that this is it. So, in order to follow the Eightfold Path, you must have, if we started at the top, right understanding. Going around clockwise, right intention. Right speech, all right? Right action. Now, in the understanding of right, you understand, here's the word it might be a better, correct, proper, okay? Proper understanding, proper intention, proper speech, proper action, proper work, proper effort, meditation, meditation, not mediation, and then contemplation. These are the 8 steps of the Eightfold Path, all right? Now, there is a dilemma here as well. Who determines what is right? Can't answer that for you. There's no clear-cut understanding of who determines what is right, all right? So the 4 Noble Truths giving way to the Eightfold Path. If you're going to remember anything, I'd say it was the four Noble Truths. But the Eightfold Path is this pathway of an understanding of where morality would come from. Because if you have the right actions, the right speech, the right effort, then you're going to eventually come to the place where you end desire or any sense of desire. Now, that may not make a lot of sense to you, but this is the essence of what Buddhism is. Now, one final thing that I want us to do around our tables and have some discussion, and then I want to take some Q&A. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to discuss this. We're still going to finish early. 5 to 7 minutes to discuss this. Here's the question. If you are going to take the first step of those, which one should be taken first? Now, this is a very bad Buddhist question. I don't think any Buddhist would ask what is most important. All are important, Buddha would say. But if you were going to take one, which would be your one first step that you should take? Now, I have one, so you can be wrong. No, you can't be wrong, but I think it's an interesting discussion. Uncle John, what did you have? Well, okay, John, you talk about it in your group, and then we're going to talk. So, okay, you gave it away, John. No, that's not the one I choose, by the way. All right, talk amongst yourselves for just a second and talk about which one of these do you think would be the most important first step. So, again, we're going to conclude with this tonight. So the things have been asked, is that the Star of David? Most of you have picked that out. This is a symbol used within Buddhism, but it is not intended by them to be the Star of David. It happens to show up here because of the geometric design to all these things. So, but it's there. I can definitely see it myself. It's very, very clear. All right, so we had, how many of you chose right understanding? You're with Uncle John up here. All right, very good. All right. How many of you chose right meditation? That was another big one. Okay. Chris Baker chose right contemplation. Anybody go with Chris? All right. Oh, you smart people in the back. Agreed with you, Chris. All right, very good. All right, right effort or right work or right action. What's the distinguishable difference between those three? Couldn't tell you, but nevertheless, they seem really similar. So right action, effort, or action. Anybody there? All right, how many started with speech? Okay, clearly, that would not be what I would choose. I wonder why. How about right intention? All right, these are my people. All right, here's the reason I say right intention, because you can have right understanding and right speech and right work and right action, but if you do it for the wrong motives, thus James chapter 3, if you do it with the wrong motives, it can't be right. All right, here we go. A rebuttal from the man from Dean Road. Do what? No, you could not. That is impossible. There are no, you're assuming that meditation and prayer are the same thing. Oh, I don't know that those two things are. All right, there are no wrong answers, but I always go with intention because of that, because intention goes at more of the understanding. Austin is going to fight me on this. He says, no, this is not it. So, but again, we'll come back next time and we'll talk specifically about these two branches, Theravada Buddhism, and we're also going to learn what conservative means as it relates to world religions, which is not what conservative necessarily means in our political ideation. So we'll have to divorce ourselves from that a little bit, but we'll talk about Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. We'll also talk about how does one work towards this place of enlightenment? Are there things that one would actually do? And of course there are, because all of this is based on your own human effort of what you would accomplish. So we'll talk about that, and obviously we will also have a segment in which we talk about, which we've already kind of engaged in, how do we engage this faith with some questions, with some thoughts, and ways that we would turn someone or help someone see the truth of Christianity, the truth of Christ, from the place of Buddhism. All right, once again, I am so appreciative of you guys. I hope that this is continuing to be something that is worthwhile for you. If it wasn't, you wouldn't come back. So, but I'm so thankful and appreciative of you in doing that. So again, we will not meet next week.